Hello, I'm Reverend Rick, and it is my honor to be with you today. We really hope that this video is a blessing to you. And if it is, please consider making a donation. People watch our videos locally when they cannot necessarily come to church throughout the United States and the world. So please join us and click the link below and make a donation. Thank you, and let this be a blessing to you.
So let's prepare ourselves and put your hand over your eyes. I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. Now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now over your heart, and just extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that happy and successful people don't make things happen. Happy and successful people don't make things happen. They allow them to happen. They allow them to happen. You know, this force for good, Ernest Holmes called it a force for good. We often call it God, or Allah, or Elohim, or the sacred grandmother tree, or infinite wisdom, or divine intelligence, whatever we call that force for good. It wants us to be successful. It wants us to be happy in our life. And so if we would just set an intention and be mindful of that intention all the time. In other words, don't just set it on New Year's Eve and then forget about it, but set an intention and be mindful of that intention, and then to cooperate with next steps that are being shown to us. Because every time we set an intention, next steps are being shown to us that are in alignment with the spiritual principles that are governing us, the spiritual laws that are governing us. How easy is that? Set an intention, keep it firm before you, and look for next steps that are being presented that are in alignment with spiritual laws. Not only will we achieve our goal, but we'll be happy in the process and in the result of achieving that goal. You know, there are a lot of rich people in the world. Some are happy and some are not happy. Being rich and having prestige doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be happy, because there's a portion of those folks who are so worried about protecting what they have that they can't allow more good into their lives. They're not happy in that experience. Well, the Hindus have a great teaching for us, a powerful teaching on this idea of allowing in our life, not grabbing, not making happen, not hoarding, but allowing the bounty of God's love and fruits into our lives. This teaching is called the Bhagavad Gita. It is one of the sacred scriptures of the Hindu tradition. And it is a 700-verse poem that was written thousands of years ago. It is a conversation, a wartime conversation between the head of the army of the time and his chariot driver, who happens to be God, but we don't know that until the end of the 700 verses. It's a conversation about how to be in connection with sacred doing. See, what happened is Prince Arjuna, who was the head of the military, went into a depression. And the depression was, how can I do this and protect my soul? How can I do what I'm doing and protect the soul of my nation? How great would it be to have a leader who did that, whose main concern was protecting his soul and the soul of the nation? The world would change if we could have that kind of a leader, if you get my drift. Well, there's tons of spiritual nourishment in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to focus on, I've been focusing on this series on the 4 pillars of action. Because, as I've said before, we hear a lot in church about becoming more of a spiritual being, and we need to hear a lot about that. But we we also need to hear about sacred doing, because most of us are spending the most time of our day in doing, not in being, but in doing. So we want to be able to have some sacred doing in our life. He's talking about the sacred, the 4 pillars of Dharma. And our Dharma, as we've been saying, the word Dharma has many, many definitions. I'm talking about the Hindu definition. Most often we hear the word Dharma and we think of teaching, because that's how we use it the most in the Western culture, is a Dharma talk, a teaching. But I'm using the Hindu definition, which is more that force that I was talking about, that essence that is you, that is what makes you you. It's what makes you unique. As I said last week, you know, if you have siblings or you are a parent of more than one child, you know that every child has a unique way of being. They have some uniqueness. That's their Dharma. Their uniqueness is their Dharma in your life. And what we know is our Dharma determines who we are and what we'll do in our life. If you try and do something that is unnatural to your Dharma, Krishna says, you won't be happy. So if you're naturally a shy person, probably real estate sales isn't the best idea for you. Okay? If you are not attracted to people of the same sex, don't go to a gay bar to meet somebody. Know what your Dharma is. Know what your essence is. All of us have all kinds of uniquenesses to our essence. And what Lord Krishna says, it's better to fail at your Dharma than to succeed at somebody else's Dharma. Well, the last 2 weeks, we've talked about the first 2 of the 4 pillars. The first pillar, know your Dharma. Know who you are. Know what makes you you. Be okay with that. Be good with that. Know that it may shift and change, but you have an essence. Figure out what that essence is and be okay with it. The second one is, once you figure it out, do it full out. Do it full out. We talked about those 2, and they're on, you can get them on our YouTube channel or in the CD. But today we're going to go with the final 2. And number 3 is this: let go of your fruits. Let go of your fruits. Now, as I mentioned, Arjuna is depressed. He's down in the bottom of his chariot. He's crying. He doesn't know which way to go. And Krishna is trying to help him by helping him understand these 4 pillars. Well, the first 2 pillars take him a while to warm up to, know your Dharma, and do it full out, but he gets them finally. So it's time to move on to the 3rd Dharma, know your fruits. And Arjuna says to Krishna, what are you talking about? I'm not even grasping any of this. Know your fruits. Let go of your fruits, rather. And Krishna says this: you have every right to your work. You have no right to your fruit, the fruit of your labor. You have every right to your work. You have no right to the fruits of your labor. Arjuna says again, what are you talking about? And he struggles with this. And so Krishna had to reiterate this to him over and over and over again. Let go of the fruits. Let go of the fruits. Let go of the fruits. Never engage in action for reward. Never engage in action for reward. And never long for inaction. Now, these are hard teachings that take some contemplation. We don't have time to contemplate here, but I'm always worried that whenever I say things that feel a little odd to me, they must feel a little odd to other people. So what does it mean, never long for inaction? It doesn't mean you don't deserve to retire. When it's time for your retirement, retire. Don't go to work anymore. Go somewhere. Do something. But know that inaction is not always a bad thing. It's okay in parts. But what he's saying here to Lord Krishna is don't give up. Don't let go of any action, of all action in your life. You must be committed to your Dharma, to your essence, to who you are, both in success, but also in failure. And that's what happens sometimes. when we start to fail, and life gets tricky for us sometimes, when we go up that mountain that's not smooth, and we have challenges in our life, we want to give up, and we start looking at other people. I want to do what they're doing. I want to look like they look. I want to do how they are doing life. But it's not our way. We want to be true to our Dharma in both success and in failure, and in being true to your Dharma in success and failure, that's when you begin to turn the ship around towards success in your life. In this third pillar, Krishna is teaching us a universal truth that is in all of the paths that we ever study, although I think it escapes new thought sometimes. But it's in our teaching as well, and that is the power of non-attachment. There is a power in non-attachment. Krishna says this: when we cling to negative effect, cling to things, when we grasp, when we grab, when we try and control, we try and make things happen, that has a negative effect on our performance. It disturbs our mind. And most importantly, it keeps you in the future. And what matters to your success is not in the future, it's right now. It's this moment right now. The mind that is consistent, constantly evaluating, how am I doing? Am I a winner or a loser? How am I measuring up? That mind is a divided mind. That mind becomes a disturbed mind. Krishna tells Arjuna there are 3 pernicious effects of a divided mind, of a disturbed mind. I love that word pernicious. I love that word pernicious. I thought I knew what it meant. I kind of knew what it meant, but I wanted to look it up. And when I looked it up, I realized how powerful a word it is. Because what pernicious means is a delayed negative effect. A gradual, delayed negative effect. And I think a lot of us are living under a pernicious mind right now when we are giving up, when we have this slow, delayed negative effect in our life. Many of you have heard me tell the story of the frog. You know, if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, that frog will pop out. If you put a frog in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, that frog will cook. And that's happening to some of us. We're falling asleep to the power of our Dharma, to the power of spiritual laws that are governing us in our life. And it's having a pernicious, a slow, gradual effect, negative effect on our lives. And I think in the life of our country. The 3 pernicious effects are these: disturbance, obscuration, and separation. The first one is when we're grabbing, when we're trying to make success, when we're trying to control everybody to have a successful life, when we're grasping our reward in our life, we have a disturbed mind. It just disturbs our mind. You know, if you try to meditate while you're craving food or you're craving sex, you know, it's really hard to have that tunnel vision that is required of us when we are having a meditation. You can't do it. It disturbs your mind. You can't have tunnel vision anymore. It's what the yogis call an overheated mind. That's what the Hindus yogi call it, an overheated mind. We have to be able to clear and not have a disturbed mind. The second negative effect, pernicious negative effect of grasping our reward in our life is the obscure mind. We don't see clearly. We can't see the whole big picture. We can only see what we're looking at. Our tunnel vision becomes only that. So if you're craving ice cream, chocolate ice cream, and that's what you're craving right now, that's all you're seeing. You're not seeing the big picture. You're not seeing that yesterday you made a commitment to take better care of your cholesterol numbers. You're not seeing that yesterday you decided to give up sugar for your health. You can't see that because it's obscured. It's obscured by your cravings, your grasping. The third pernicious effect is separation. So to use the ice cream again, if you are craving ice cream, You're grasping at ice cream. Your mind is grasping ice cream. It's trying to make things happen through ice cream. You are now separate from the ice cream. And when we're separate from the ice cream, it's over there. And if we can't have it, we think we're not enough. We think we're empty. We can't get full in our life. Those are the three pernicious effects of grasping for things, of making things happen, of grabbing things in this life instead of allowing it to happen. What Krishna told Arjuna is something we've heard from Buddha. It's something we've heard from Eckhart Tolle, and that, again, is the power of non-attachment. See, we get mixed up, and especially New Thought people, we get this mixed up. We're not saying don't have desire. Desire is something we want you to have. We want you to desire things. It's important for your life. You should always have some hot desires and some warm desires and some cold desires. You should have a bunch of desires in your life. What we're asking you to do is not get attached to the outcome of when it happens. Not desire, it's the attachment to outcome that is at issue here. That's what brings on the three pernicious effects. We want you to desire a mate if you don't have a mate, but if you don't have it yet, don't think that you're not handsome, pretty, or desirable. You are. We want you to have a job that is fulfilling and pays well, but if you don't have that yet, don't think that you're not brilliant, because you are. If you want to have the right size body for you, not for your mother, not for your spouse, not for Vogue, not for, the insurance charts that would make us all look like Twiggy if we weren't careful. Not for any of that, but for how you want your body to look. If you don't, we want you to desire that, but if you don't have it yet, don't think you're not gorgeous. Don't think you're not beautiful in this life, because you are. Let go of the fruits. Let go of the fruits. The fourth pillar of action. Third pillar of action. The fourth one is turn it over to God. Turn it over to God. That's the fourth pillar of action of your Dharma. Now, I don't know if Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob ever read the Bhagavad Gita, because it was written thousands of years ago. They could have. Step 3, turn it over. Turn it over in our life. See, Krishna reminds Arjuna of the Atman Brahman presence. It's a powerful teaching in Hinduism because the Atman is your individualized soul. The Brahman is the force for good. There's one presence. It's called the Atman Brahman presence. It's not called the Atman presence and the Brahman presence. It's called the Atman Brahman presence to remind us that we are one with His presence. It's not separate from us. So what we're turning over, we turn it over to God. It's not a God in the sky that's sometimes moody, sometimes gives us what we want. It's not the rageful God of your childhood. It's a God of love, a God of force for good that wants you to be totally happy and successful, not some days, every day in your life. And when we can begin to trust that, that's when we begin to turn it over in our life. It's too bad that we have to wait until we're at the bottom of the chariot, depressed and sad and unhappy, in order for us to move forward, to talk to God. We have to learn to talk to God every single day. Get in the habit of it. Not just when life presents its challenges, not when we're just down in the bottom of our chariot, but every day. Because, as Arjuna found out, when he did pillar 1 and pillar 2 and pillar 3, stuff still happened. And don't you find that true? Stuff still happens. We live in a messy universe. And when that happens, that's when we absolutely have to talk to God. But if we could learn to have this conversation before that happens, that would be an even greater thing in our life. Necessity is the mother of invention, but also the mother of invention is challenge. I don't know about you, but the greatest strides that I've made is when I was on the bottom of my chariot. I wish it wasn't that way. God didn't need it to be that way. I did. I wasn't willing until it was time that I had nowhere else to go but to God in our lives. We can stop that. There are two great examples of this. One of them is Harriet Tubman, you know, who was a Christian, and the other was Mahatma Gandhi, who was a Hindu. Most of you are aware of Harriet Tubman. She was often called the Moses. Harriet Tubman had been sold into slavery 6 times. And she found out 4 hours before her 7th sale that she was going to be sold. And she just thought, I can't do it one more time. And so she ran away. Now this is a woman who, of course, she was a field hand, so she did not read. So a map was not going to help her. What helped her was her reliance on God. She said that in slave times, there were Negro spirituals, and the Negro spirituals were songs about freedom that were written in code, so that the white slave masters couldn't quite know what they were. They could hear them, but they didn't quite know the language. Well, one of the songs that she remembered, a verse from the song when she ran away, is follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. It was part of one of her songs. And what that meant, when she decoded it, when she knew what it meant, was follow the North Star. So she kept saying to herself, follow the North Star, follow the North Star. She followed the North Star all the way to New York. But on her journey, she could hear what they call the slave catchers. There were people who were hired just to run around and catch slaves. And she could hear them getting close, and she could hear the dogs barking. And that was the time that she went to God, that she turned it over to God. Not for protection, she says, but for guidance. Get me the hell out of here. The guidance that she needed. And so not only did she go to New York, make it, but as you know, she was the head of the Underground Railroad. She said she used that internal guidance. Now, she admitted she was scared to death to go back. It was not an easy choice. But she knew who she was, she knew her dharma, and when you know who you are, you know what to do. And she kept going back, and going back, and going back. And she would ask for the divine guidance each and every time. What white people are safe for me? What white people are part of the Underground Railroad? Because there were lots, but there were lots who were not. The only guidance she had came from that internal guidance, because you can't go up and ask somebody. Powerful, powerful teaching for us from this beautiful historical perspective. Well, she was so successful in understanding her divine guidance and turning it over to God that she became a scout for the Union Army. And she was a commander of a group in the Union Army to take them back behind enemy lines so they could see what was going on. While she was doing that, she freed over 750 slaves in one night. She did that because she turned it over to God. Now, I don't know that she ever knew about the Bhagavad Gita. I expect not. But who did know about the Bhagavad Gita was Mahatma Gandhi. Now, what we don't know about Mahatma Gandhi a lot is that he grew up what is called a fear-obsessed child. He was scared of everything. He couldn't sleep at night without the light on. When he went to school, the kids stole his lunch money every single day. He was just afraid of everything. A scrawny little kid. His ears stuck out more than Barack Obama's earrings. And so his parents were worried, and so they sent him over to school in England, and he became a lawyer while he was in England. The only problem was he didn't totally understand his dharma, and he was petrified of public speaking. So at his first case, he goes into court, he opens his mouth, and he starts throwing up. And he runs out of the courtroom in embarrassment. Well, everybody made fun of him. They nicknamed him the caseless barrister because nobody would hire him to do their cases anymore. And so he went back to England, and then he went over to South Africa, and he began to get a little taste of what his Dharma was in South Africa. And he knew eventually what he needed to do was to work to free his people from British rule. Now, how in the world did this man get to be from this mess to Mahatma Gandhi? He says it happened this way. While he was in South Africa, he sought out what we would call a practitioner. And the practitioner gave him a chant. Now, he already was familiar with the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, he said that he not only memorized the Bhagavad Gita, but he would chant it every single day. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he practiced the Bhagavad Gita every day. He practiced the 4 pillars every single day. And so he began to understand what his Dharma was. He began to do it out loud. And he still had fear. And so he went to this practitioner and he said, I'm getting a feeling, but I'm just petrified all the time. And so she gave him a word, one word to chant. The word was Rama. 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 That's a word that means God. It's another word for God. Rama. And he chanted it ceaselessly every day for weeks and months and years. Rama, Rama, Rama. He chanted it so much that it became part of the fabric of who he was. He absolutely internalized this presence in his mind, in his body, and in his spirit. And when he was able to internalize it and come from God, not to God, but come from God, he became Mahatma Gandhi. And that trajectory not only brought a whole continent out of darkness, but also many of us who followed, shedding British rule, shedding any kind of rule in our life. It's powerful spiritual work. Whether it's somebody in our life who has some control over us, even subtly, perniciously in our life, or somebody who's really trying to control us, actively, we need to get rid of them. Rama. Rama. Harriet Tubman says this: if you're tired, keep going. If you're scared, keep going. If you're hungry, keep going. If you want to taste freedom, keep going. We can do this. This Bhagavad Gita series has been fun for me to do, although somewhat challenging at times, but fun for me to do. I hope you'll do this. Get it and read it. Don't think you're going to sit down with Bhagavad Gita and read it in one day. You could do that, but you wouldn't do yourself a service. Read it slow. Read it in parts. Read a little bit. And see what nourishment it has for you. It's powerful. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that there's only one power. It's the power of love, the power of God. I give thanks for that. There's really nothing more to say than thanks, 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 thanks. I release this word into the lawn together we say.